I just saw someone being assaulted in a dark alley, but I've been a victim of a terrible attack in recent times. But because I was filled with fear, because the memories of that situation flooded to my head, I froze, and eventually I ran in fear. What proposition would have is make me criminally liable, throw me into jail, because in the heat of the moment, I wasn't able to evaluate the risk that came with helping that person. Thus, two questions arose. First, on the principle, and second, if people are more incentivized to help. They try to make the argument that people have a duty to prevent harm because if you were in the situation of a victim, you would also want that help. This is wrong for three reasons. First, that you can't approximate someone's preferences. That is to say that every single person thinks in a different way. Every situation is incredibly different. And you can't just say that they're all liable and that we're all going to judge them in different scenarios. Because the fact that they concede the idea that there are so many specific situations that all turn out in specific ways means they concede the idea that not all of them can be judged in that exact same manner, in the sense that they can't all be judged to be liable. Every person has different morals. Every person thinks a different way. And every person judges and evaluates that risk differently. We wouldn't charge that innocent person. But second, the notion that because you're privileged, in the sense that you're the person who's outside of this situation and you should help, doesn't mean that you have to help the person. Like we told you in a POI, if you're a rich person, that doesn't mean that you have a liable obligation to help people in poverty. Yes, you might be morally obligated, but that's not something that should have legislative cause. We wouldn't impose that. But third, even if, how could one person in the heat of the moment possibly evaluate the situation? Because biologically, we're hardwired to either fight or flight. What that means is that some people have a biological instinct to just run, because they might have been in a situation like this in the past, or they might have social anxiety, or they might not think that they're able to help that person and they might make the situation much worse. What that means is that you're now putting people to be liable, throwing them into jail because of their own biological instincts. You are essentially betraying a person's own biological instinct to either fight or flight. Every person is different. Every situation is different. That means you can't just say that they're all liable. Third, on our comparative, we told you three things. First, that they haven't done anything wrong necessarily. Just because they didn't help someone doesn't mean that they are liable of a crime. It doesn't mean that they were at fault, because the person at fault to remember here is the person who's actually doing the crime. Or if there is no fault at all, if it's just an accident, you're not in fault of that accident. You're not in fault of that person being injured. But second, it's justified because when it's justified, it's when you have a moral obligation, in the sense that there might be a relationship. If a mother doesn't help a son, we would say that there is a moral obligation for that mother to do something for her son. And that means that she could be held accountable because there was a relationship, a distinct relationship between the two people. But that doesn't exist when you're just out in the park and then someone gets attacked and you're expected to help them. That relationship never existed. But third, it's unreasonable to put this burden on some person, because ultimately they might not have the reflexes to be able to do this. Comparatively, they're so much worse on this principle because they're putting innocent people away for doing absolutely nothing. Now, second, on the incentive to help, they tried to tell us that legislation will mean that more people are incentivized to help others. This is wrong for three reasons. First, note that they're already likely to help in this scenario. Someone in their low burden situation is most likely going to call 911 at the point where they have a seizure. But they're also more likely to help in other situations that might be more extreme. But second, people are likely to flee once they know that they could be criminally liable. What this means is that if they know that they could be liable for not doing everything that they could, they're so much more incentivized to leave the situation, to not be a part of this situation, to not help that person in need because they think they might be liable for doing a bad job. But third, even if you help them, people might not be trained professionally. At the point where you say you have to help them or you're criminally liable, and and they're not professionally trained, they could cause seriously more harmful injuries onto that person or make the situation so much worse. Comparatively, we get three things. First, that people are more likely to help because it's a less stressful situation. You don't have the thought of being thrown into jail at the back of your mind. That second, that safety is so much more imperative in the society. And third, that we get a society that's grounded in trust and helping each other and not being forced into doing something.